Hello, and welcome to BrewingDaily.com. I'm your host, Matthew Winther. Today we're talking with Steve Berg, the owner of Vegas Homebrew, and today we're going to do a partial mash brew. Now, a partial mash brew, it's a little bit harder than an extract brew, but it's not nearly as hard as an all grain brew, right?
That's about right.
Basically, the good things about a partial mash brew is that you have complete control over your ingredients. You can put in whatever malts you want, whatever hops you want. You can make the beer exactly how you want it, but you don't have to spend all day mashing.
Correct.
So let's get started. So Steve, why don't you take a minute and explain some of the ingredients we have on our table here.
Okay. So Matthew, for a mini mash, the bulk of the fermentable sugar is going to come in the form of a dry malt or possibly a syrup. This is sugar that's already been mashed out in the process, so a lot of the work has been taken out of this equation because we're just using extract where the sugars have already been mashed. In this particular beer, we'd like to clear it nicely, so we're going to have Irish moss as part of the boil process, hops, of course, for bittering, flavoring, and aroma, and then the specialty grains, which is a combination of a variety of special grains, maybe some base malt, but this is really where the flavor of the beer comes from. And then lastly, a choice of yeast, and in this case, it looks like a White Labs Saison yeast.
Now, Steve, this is a vial of yeast. Now, it comes in a couple different forms as well, right?
Yeah, this is a liquid, active liquid alive yeast. It's by White Labs. Y Yeast out of Oregon also makes a liquid yeast. It's in a foil packet where you smack the pack. Additionally, there are several dry yeast options. Personally, I believe that the liquid yeast is probably a little bit better than the dry.
Sure.
So Matt, above and beyond just the ingredients, we also have a certain requirement of equipment. Why don't you go ahead and explain what we've got in front of us here?
Certainly. Alright, Steve, well, one of the most important things you can have whenever you're brewing is going to be a thermometer, and I've got a couple ones here. They make them in a few different styles. Here we have an airlock. An airlock allows the CO2 to escape from the fermenter without allowing any bacteria or air to get in. It's got a rubber cork because we're going to be using a glass carboy today. A nice metal spoon. You can use any kind of spoon. I would stay away from wooden spoons simply because they can harbor bacteria. We've got a funnel here. Again, this is only necessary when you're using a carboy, which we will be doing today. So it's a funnel. And we'll have a secondary strainer which will strain some of the gunk out before it gets to the fermenter. The funnel also has a strainer in it. We're going to have Star San. Sanitizer is always crucial. It's very crucial anytime you brew. It's, they say the 3 rules of brewing are sanitize, 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 keep everything as clean as possible. And then we have our brew vessel, which is basically, or our boiling vessel, which is just basically, this is a 16-quart stock pot, perfect for our applications today.
So, and not to forget, probably the star of the show, which is the fermenter vessel. Matthew, you have a particular one?
Glass carboy.
Okay. And I've got a 8-gallon food-grade bucket, both of which would make fine primary fermenters. For the purposes of making this beer, you choose the one that you've got handy and that you feel most comfortable with. Absolutely.
All right, so this time we're introducing mashing. And this is something that we haven't done. If you've done all extract, you don't have to mash. And we're not going to do a full mash because that would be an all grain brew, but we're going to do a partial mash.
Right, so we're only dealing with a smaller quantity of grains, but we'd like the grains to impart their character and a little bit of alcohol in the beer. To do that, we start with grains. And we will take the grains out of the Ziploc and put them into a bag, either a muslin sack or a straining bag. And then they'll spend some time in hot water where the starches in here turn into sugar.
You usually want about 150 to 155 degrees, but it depends on the recipe. It depends on the type of beer you're making. So yeah, we'll put those in. It's like making a big grain tea. And that's what's going to start our process off. And then of course we're going to add the dry malt extract or the liquid malt extract, and that's going to bump up our sugar enough to make our beer.
But we certainly want to get this done first because those processes down the road are a boil, and we don't want to boil these grains. Hot is good, boiling is bad.
Okay, so we're ready to start our mash, and we're going to put the grains into, I just have a nice little grain sack here. Just going to filter out all the particles, and we're going to pour this in now. And as far as how much grain you should use, just follow your recipe. It'll tell you how much grain to use. We're using, I believe, about 6 pounds of grain for this recipe. Different kinds of grain. I have some Vienna malt. I have some wheat malt. I have some Pilsner malt. You know, and we're just gonna.
And don't be surprised if the recipe you follow has a lot less than 6 pounds of grains. This might be the high end of your typical mini mash recipe.
Sure. I'm just gonna put this in there like that. Basically, we want the grains to float around there as free as possible inside the bag, and we want the temperature is about 154, which is perfect for our recipe. And we're gonna let that sit now and keep the temperature at about 154, between 150 and 155, for about 45 minutes. And again, that's also per the recipe. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter.